What if one of the darkest chapters in modern history had ended differently? What if ISIS, an organization built on fear, extremism, and brutal tactics, had actually won in Syria? Today, we step into an alternate reality where the black flag flies not just over Raqqa, but over Damascus, Aleppo, and beyond. Buckle up, because this isn't just a scenario, it's a warning. 1. The takeover. To understand this alternate reality, we must revisit the crucial turning points of the Syrian civil war. By 2014, ISIS was at its peak, controlling vast swaths of territory in both Iraq and Syria. In this alternate timeline, their military campaigns succeed. Syrian government forces are overwhelmed, opposition groups are crushed, and ISIS seizes Damascus, declaring Syria as part of their so-called caliphate. In this scenario, the Assad regime falls. The once diverse fabric of Syrian society is shredded. Religious minorities face mass persecution, cultural heritage sites are demolished, and cities become hubs of propaganda and military operations. But ISIS wouldn't stop at Syria's borders. Their next targets? Iraq, Lebanon, and potentially Jordan. Their ideology spreads like wildfire, igniting terror cells across Europe, Africa, and Asia. 2. The humanitarian crisis. The fall of Syria under ISIS rule triggers one of the largest humanitarian crises in modern history. Millions flee to neighboring countries, Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon are pushed beyond their limits, while Europe faces an unprecedented refugee influx. International organizations like the United Nations and Red Cross struggle to provide aid as ISIS imposes strict border controls, blocks humanitarian aid, and exploits civilians as human shields. But it's not just a refugee crisis. It's a generational catastrophe. An entire generation of Syrian children grows up knowing nothing but war, fear, and extremist ideology pushed by ISIS propaganda. This isn't just a crisis, it's a ticking time bomb for the region and the world. 3. The global response. How would the world respond to an ISIS-controlled Syria? For the United States and NATO allies, the stakes would skyrocket. Full-scale military intervention would no longer be optional, it would be a necessity. But military intervention wouldn't be simple. With ISIS entrenched in urban areas, every strike risks civilian casualties. On the other side, Russia and Iran, once backing Assad, are forced to rethink their strategies. Iran might double down on supporting militias in Iraq, while Russia's geopolitical influence in the region crumbles. Meanwhile, regional players like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Israel face their own dilemmas. Do they engage militarily and risk domestic backlash? Or do they seal their borders and wait out the storm? In this reality, the Middle East becomes a geopolitical powder keg ready to explode. 4. The economic fallout. The economic consequences of an ISIS-controlled Syria would be catastrophic, not just for the region, but globally. Syria's already fragile economy would collapse entirely. Oil fields would fall under ISIS control, giving the group a steady flow of black market revenue. The global oil market could face instability, with prices skyrocketing as major supply routes become war zones. Smuggling networks would grow stronger, funding not just ISIS, but other extremist groups worldwide. For neighboring countries like Jordan and Lebanon, economic ruin becomes a looming reality. Tourism disappears, foreign investments dry up, and unemployment skyrockets. 5. Global security threat. The most dangerous consequence of ISIS winning in Syria would be the global security threat. With a stable base of operations in Syria, ISIS would have the resources, infrastructure, and manpower to plan and execute large-scale terror attacks worldwide. Europe would brace for frequent terror incidents. Southeast Asian nations with Muslim populations might face insurgencies inspired by ISIS ideology. The internet would become a battleground as extremist propaganda floods social media platforms. ISIS wouldn't just be a regional threat, it would become a global menace on an unprecedented scale. In the end, what would an ISIS victory truly mean? A broken Syria. A destabilized Middle East. A global community paralyzed by fear. But history reminds us that extremism thrives where there is chaos, poverty, and injustice. The fall of ISIS in our timeline wasn't just a military victory, it was a reminder of what happens when hate takes root in vulnerable societies. This alternate reality serves as a stark warning. When the world hesitates to act, chaos fills the void. Thankfully, ISIS did not win. But the scars of their reign remain etched in Syria's landscape and in the hearts of millions. What are your thoughts on this alternate scenario? How do you think the world would have changed if ISIS had succeeded? Share your opinions in the comments, and if you found this analysis thought-provoking, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's turning point.